From the Kenya Universities and Colleges Central Placement Service showed that out of the 143,140 students who qualified to go to university this year, some 15,547 did not apply for degree programs. Now, this means that 10.8% of students eligible to go to university chose not to. Now, looking closer at those numbers, 4,840 of the over 15,000 students who didn't apply for university preferred technical and vocational education and training, or TVET colleges. Now, it used to be that a university degree was your ticket into the job market. However, with youth unemployment at record levels and saturated professional fields, the hundreds of thousands of graduates leaving university campuses with that all-important piece of paper aren't guaranteed that coveted entry-level job. Now, beyond that, the labor market is changing, with companies lamenting the caliber of graduates entering the workforce. So that's our discussion tonight: the state of higher education in this country and the future of work. Let me introduce my guests really quickly. With me in studio is Sam Gishuru. He is the founder of Kidato School. He'll be telling us more about that. And we also have Jonathan Wesaya, who is an educationist, joining us remotely. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me tonight.
Thank you.
Jonathan, let me begin with you. You know, by the time we're talking about 10% of eligible students who could have gone and pursued a college degree or university degree, choosing to go the TVET or polytechnic way, you know, what are those stats actually saying in your view, especially when you're thinking about higher education? And, you know, at some point that was the thing to go for.
Thanks, Victoria, for having me. And I think what we need to be having as a country at this point in time is our national discourse on education needs to be that we talk about the thing.
Okay, so we seem to have lost Jonathan temporarily. Hopefully we can link up with him once again. But Sam, you know, when you hear such numbers, 10% is not a small figure. You know, what does that tell you, just generally maybe about how young people are viewing conventional university degrees now?
Well, I think as you had just started saying, a university, going to universities to get a degree was more of the route to get employed. Yeah. It was, we didn't go to university to get educated. We went there to get a paper that would get us a job. The fact that there are other routes today means that you don't need to spend 4 years to get that job. If you have a training school like Moringa School, in about 50 weeks, at a very small fraction of the cost of university, you're more likely to get a job faster than if you graduate from the local university after 4 years. So what's the point of going to university? And especially being that most of the jobs that are available right now, they're very hands-on, they're very technical. So I am actually very proud of the 10% that have chosen to go the TVET route. Because I also looked at the numbers again, and I noticed that 30% of those that were accepted into the university were not given the courses they chose. So the 10% are more lucky than the 30% who are going to universities and not taking the courses they want to do in life. And so I think, I mean, my admiration for these young people who've made this choice.
So we're likely to see some job dissatisfaction, at least from the ones who've gone the university degree route. But Jonathan, I hear you're back with us. Just to kind of revisit that first question, in terms of what you make of those numbers, that 10% who've decided, hey, I'm going to go the TVET or the polytechnic route. I mean, what do you say about that?
The decision by 10% of the people who are qualified to join university not to join university should actually not even be worrying us. What should be worrying us is what type of education and what quality of education are we offering at any particular level. Because university education is not the only form of education.
Okay, we lost him again, but he said something really important. University education is not the only, and some parents are just clasping their pearls and saying, what do you mean university? And actually what you talked about earlier was preparing people for a skills-based marketplace, right? How important is that now, you know, and just how the labor market is changing?
I think the universities were very useful back in the day. What happened is that the market changed and universities didn't change. Okay, so we end up being employers who have university graduates who do not fit in the marketplace. And for a long time we've been saying, hey, you know what? How about you incentivize the market leaders to teach universities? Or you have university lecturers who are actually currently practicing in the marketplace so that we have a lot more alignment. And that misalignment has just caused such a big mess in the sense that university students come to the workplace with high expectations of high salaries and high remunerations, and yet they do not match the outputs that they're given. While TVET and technical trained people will come in, start small, and within a year, 2 years, they're achieving the same goals that the university students would have wanted to achieve. So yeah, I like what he just said. I mean, university education is not the only form of education that's necessary to work today.
Right.
Yes. Most of the engineers, I work in the engineering space, software engineers do not have university degrees. And most of the engineers we work with will make between $3,000 to all the way to $7,000 a month in salary after about 2 years training in software engineering. If we look at places like the US and you notice things like Lambda School that is actually paying students to study software engineering so they can get them jobs as well. Universities are still saying, pay us, we'll teach you, and then best of luck when you leave us with the paper we give you. So the universities have really a lot of work to do. And actually, I'm concerned when I hear you calling them institutions of higher learning. I feel like back in the day, universities used to be the place for ideas, research. I mean, we used to have, you know, independent thinking. And today, they're such bureaucratic organizations that bring conformity, that take away your edge, and you have to follow a certain path. But the world is expecting you to be a very unique individual when you step out.
But I wonder, Jonathan, I hope you're still with us. Do they still play a role? Because, you know, there's something that Sam mentioned, that you have a lot of these graduates leaving with high expectations for that high-paying job once they enter the job market. But there's also another dilemma in that universities are not preparing students or graduates for the industries. And you find the term half-baked been thrown around quite a bit, you know, when it comes to those coming for the entry-level jobs. What do you make of that when you're trying to reconcile the two? Graduates with what's needed in the market.
And I think the idea of throwing around the phrase half-baked is misplaced. The industry needs to train its workers for what it is producing or what it is dealing in. Nobody is going to produce workers for Safaricom, for KCB, or for Kenya Association of Manufacturers or Kenya Private Sector Alliance. No university, no TVET college is going to engage in that business. If you look at the original meaning of the word university, it is universitas from Latin. It is more of a community of thinkers, a community of teachers. People who theorize about issues, but then the narrowing down to specifics to deliver is dependent on an individual. And we make mistakes, and the president made the same mistake when he was launching the CBC curriculum, and he said it is not a must for people to go to university, and he started quoting Bill Gates and out of.
All right, we're losing you, Jonathan, so I have to cut in there. Apologies, we're losing you, Jonathan, but let me bring you in there, Sam. In terms of just the shift, not just now in higher education, I'll use that because that's what we know it as, but when you're moving from the primary, secondary, and you started Kidato as well, what did you seek to do with a school like that in terms of changing our thinking around education and how children learn and preparing them for their futures?
Well, I happen to have been a very terrible student. I mean, school was not fun for me. And I watch my kids and I see they have so much fun gaming. Actually, if you watch a child gaming right now on a computer or a laptop, when they fail, they actually self-motivated to try again and again. But what happens when a child comes back home with bad grades? They are reprimanded. They're made to feel like they're not good enough. But when you watch them alone trying to learn, you realize that failure is not an obstacle at all. It's actually a challenge. And the point was, how do we bring, children are natural learners. How do we bring them? How do we bring chemistry and sciences and mathematics and English and languages, all that stuff, in the same setting where they actually enjoy to do it? And that was one of the motivations of looking at my own children and saying, hey, I want them to love to learn, because learning is a lifetime experience. And if somebody had given me that shot to just explore the world I was living in, I'd probably have achieved a lot more than I have. And that's how we started Kidato. And so when I look at education right now, it needs to stop being that we're picking kids from the same age, putting them in the same class, giving them the same content, and grading them exactly the same way, because they are not the same. Each child is an individual. They're unique in their own interest. They're unique in their own passion. They're unique in their desires. And by grading them, then it's like you're putting mangoes together and picking a specific type of mangoes on the side and saying, these are the mangoes we want, and the other 90% of the mangoes are bad, so go figure yourself out in life. The same exact conversation you're having right now, Victoria. You're talking about 143,000 people who've been accepted to university. There was over 700,000 kids who actually finished Form 4 in 2020. Where are the 600 and change, 600,000? Nobody's talking about them. They're the bad mangoes. We've told them, go figure yourself out. And that's a big mess in our education system. So what I'd say is that after 10 years of running NILAP, I noticed the reason we're not being extremely innovative, it was not the fact that we don't have smart young people. It's that the way they have been trained to think is wrong. They've been trained to think in a specific way, and we're trying to tell them, disrupt everything you think you know, build something new. And so that's another reason that I believe strongly that education needs to change.
You know, Jonathan, I hope you are back with us. He is not. Okay. Sam, let me ask you this, because when we're looking at the workplace of the future, and I remember seeing an article talking about by 2027, we're going to see majority of people in a gig economy. So this whole thing of being employed and having benefits and whatnot won't be as popular as it is now. So how do people start positioning themselves for that new reality?
Now, if you're still teaching kids, write your notes in 10 books, we're not giving them laptops to study in class. We're still trying to give them the knowledge that we have, which is very limited, and the internet has open knowledge and it's democratized. How do we expect them to compete in the gig economy? So when we built Kuhustle in 2016, the idea was, let's build a platform where a young person seated anywhere in this country can get a really good job. What did we experience? People lacked the discipline of timekeeping, project management, customer support, and dealing with their customers. And we realized they had grown up in an area where they thought that if I have a skill, customers will come to me. I don't have to sell myself. And if they give me the job, the customer has to follow up with me. I don't have to update the customer. And if I choose I will not deliver on Tuesday, I'll deliver on Thursday, it's okay. And if I choose I'll change the pricing between the project, it's okay. I mean, there was a lot of failures in the process. And you realize now we already built a platform. They're 20, 30,000, they got to 50,000. Now we need to go back and educate them. So how do we prepare people for the gig economy? We go back. You know, we start with the basics: timekeeping, financial management, customer service, sales. Okay, these are the things that people need to know to survive in the gig economy. Whether this kicks in at high school immediately or it kicks in a bit earlier, project-driven learning. If you're going to do a science project, let the kids drive it, let them own it, let them have leadership around it, because that's what they will be needed to do in the next 10 to 15 years. So let's not even talk about the work of the future. It sounds so far. It's the work of the present. I work from home full-time. You know, I mean, like, everybody I know, my entire staff of 30, 40 now, all work from home in one company, and the other company, they all still work from home. It's the work of the future is remote. Computers, managing your own time, waking up at whatever time you want to choose to wake up, managing your own resources, but delivering as required. So it's a work of the present. It's not the work of the future.
No, I'm glad you mentioned that, because COVID-19 certainly accelerated that process of moving into, the workplace of the future. But Jonathan, I want to give the last word to you. And Sam had mentioned this huge number of over 600,000 KCSE finishers who didn't get that C+ and above, right? That makes them eligible to go to university. So what happens to that number of students, of young people who have ideas, who want to do something with their lives, but just didn't make enough of a grade to get them into the respected institutions? You know, what happens to them?
Framing the results of these 600,000 learners wrongly, in the sense that when they do not qualify to go to university, we are condemning them to go into something else. So TVET in Kenya is A or B. After we have discussed everything and allocated resources, then people can go to TVET. That should not be the issue. What we need to be doing is discussing technically what can give our young people work that is dignified. If we say we need a plumber, let that plumber be a dignified plumber. Let them be paid a rate that is good enough. Let them be proud to be plumbers. Let us socialize our children and our learners and trainees that TVET work is not what they do when they lack something else to do. But then, on the other end, we need to invest in that process. We cannot be making policy statements and roadside proclamations that do not lead to anything. If you look at the budget and the allocations that have been made this financial year, I tell you, the president has made a lot of noise about TVET. The CS keeps saying things, but the TVET sector has not received the resources. But we are talking about 100% transition in primary, 100% transition post-secondary, but the resources where the rubber meets the road is where resources are allocated to function. We cannot be discussing in Kenya today that we need MCAs to have a degree. We cannot be discussing such issues, but on the other end, we are talking about teachers now moving from P1 to having a diploma, and we are having resistance. So the left hand needs to talk to the right hand. It needs to be consistent. When we say we are raising standards, let us raise standards across the board. We cannot raise standards for teachers because as it is now, the P1 course is being phased out. Primary school teachers need to have a diploma. We cannot then obtain the situation we are in where we have MCAs who are oversight individuals, allocating resources and making laws with literally no qualification. Kenya is an absurd country. That is the least I can say.
Jonathan, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your insights. Sam, as well, for coming in. We could talk about this forever. And of course, it gets the conversation going on what more needs to be done from the educational institutions and then also in the workplace. But for the individuals to know that even if you didn't get that piece of paper, you're still worthy of something great in life. Thanks for watching. Let's take a short break here on Citizen Weekend. Here's what's coming up on sports.